Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Zach Young, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're joined by Sally Phillip, known as the business mechanic. She helps senior leaders diagnose what's slowing their business down and align their teams, systems, and strategy for sustainable growth. With a career spanning global corporates and high creative and tech businesses, she brings a unique combination of bold leadership coaching, deep cultural insight, and strategic know-how. Sally, a very, very warm welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you very much, Zach. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Going to be a great episode. We have a lot to dive into. Before we do, I do like to start with your background, though. So before you became the business mechanic, can you tell us what were you doing previously and what was really your inspiration for getting into this space?
Yes, of course. Well, in essence, I started out in the dot-com boom in project and program management in what was then new media. And throughout my career, I've grown up into managing director, chief customer officer, interim C-suite and transformation roles. And a lot of what I've seen was that there was a constant pattern that emerged everywhere I worked across the different sectors, the different multinationals, corporates, startups, scale-ups, and I've worked with all of them in a number of different roles. And I think what I started saying was that you get a lot of the great strategy, you get a lot of smart people, but more often than not, the business was stalling, grinding, or blowing up in one or other area. And it wasn't because I was seeing a lack of ambition or talent, it was general friction. And I think obviously everyone can align themselves and associate with friction within a business. But it was more specific than that. It was around misaligned leadership. Quite often it was unclear roles. There was usually strong levels of cultural tension. And one of the overriding factors that I saw again and again was lack of clear decision making. More often than not, it was decision making that either wasn't happening at all, which meant that the business was grinding to a halt. There was low traction or no traction, and staff engagement levels were sort of dropping off a ledge. So when you look at businesses who are trying to evolve and grow, they're trying to manage risk, they're trying to manage their revenues and their growth and their risk and their people. It's usually the people that is the last thing to think about. And they're taken for granted. They're the best asset any business has, whether you're a services or a product, generally, because the people help make the product as well. But it was something that really started to sit uneasily with me. And I felt that I had done a huge number of transformation programs and worked with huge success and impact on actually bringing cultural alignment to organizations. And I was doing it with NLP techniques and coaching techniques that I had learned along the way. I did an NLP accreditation. I've done some other coaching accreditations along the way too. But in essence, I think what I was wanting to do was to get to a point where I could actually surface my lived experience and my knowledge of how to actually empower people and build culture from the ground up as a foundation for growth, rather than looking at it as the afterthought. Excuse me. And to actually really positively impact those environments where people wanted to make an incredible impact themselves. They wanted to have they do want to have incredible career trajectories, and yet so many of the leadership teams fail to actually pinpoint this as being one of the underlying problems within the business. And that's where the business mechanic really came about, because I wanted to look at how we create the human engine to fire up the ignition, if you like, of the engine for the growth engine and the revenue engine and the risk and managing risk and all those other areas of the business. So for me, it was about helping solve that particular problem and putting culture as the foundation for growth.
It seems like in this world, especially today, everyone's focused on AI, right? So the human aspect is being pushed back. So I
Yeah.
like that you're coming in and placing much more of an importance on it. That's for sure. I think that leads us very well into the present day. Can you walk us through, what does working with Sally look like today? What kind of companies are you currently working with? Things like that.
Of course. I think when you look at the fact that most businesses don't fail because of bad ideas, they fail because of that human engine not being able to keep up with the ambition of the business. It comes down to a number of different factors, whether it be lack of clear vision and values, even at the very core of it, or it's for sort of different reasons. Maybe a leadership team is pulling in different directions. Founders often, if you're looking at a much more of a startup, an early stage scale up, the founders are stuck being the glue and the bottlenecks in their business. And so delegation isn't something that comes easily for them. Quite often you see culture becoming vibes instead of actually the core engine. You've got various pinch points as a business scales. And I see that certain tipping points in both number of people and in revenue thresholds. And when you hit those thresholds, you often see chaos coming out of what would otherwise be seen as momentum. And so the smart people that you've engaged start to become disengaged or burnt out. They can't keep up with the vision, or the values of the business don't seem to be aligned anymore. Quite often the strategy is there and it's great, but how it's being implemented isn't really checking in with the people who are being asked to deliver it. And so those are typical problems that I will surface when I go in. And I have a 3-stage approach that I work with, whether I have a dual-pronged approach, but a 3-step phase across both. So the 3-step phase is essentially that I go in and I do a full-on diagnosis, because people will tell you what they think the problem is, but so often it's presenting problem rather than the underlying problem. And it's a bit like, what's that latest shiny thing in transformation or AI or tools and technology? Everyone wants to adapt it. Everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon. And so often it's not actually the thing that the business needs. So I like to get under the bonnet. And quite often I'll do this with an MOT or a health check report. And it looks at things like leadership alignment, cultural behaviors, decision-making, growth, friction points, operational factors, frameworks, processes, all those sorts of things. And what it presents then back to either the founder or the organization is actually where their key top 3, 4, 5 pinch points are. And those are the things that if you pull the right levers in the right way against those 4 or 5 issues, then you're more likely to see major impact and much more alignment and cultural alignment alongside the strategy and the goals of the business. And so often the goals of the business aren't filtered down in a way to the business, that to the people within the business. So often there's a communication challenge in there as well. So it's about uncovering those. And then we get into actually really fixing those foundations and getting brutally clear on what's properly broken. And that's where you really look at the cultural blind spots, the communication patterns, the leadership behaviors, and what those roles, expectations, and the authority around that is. Because a lot of businesses like to say they've got flex structures, but actually that can create chaos and misalignment in itself, because people don't have a clear path with which, or a framework to work within, because it's so flat. And it's a bit like the old days of agile, for example, where everyone says, oh, well, agile just means that there's no rules and there's no boundaries, and it's everyone's just working harder and faster. But but actually agile is very much about having a proper framework, and it's about how you rapidly get through prioritization and decision making. And it's the same here with when you're getting really brutally honest with fixing the foundations of a business. From the third step then is moving into how you fuel the future. Okay, so it's about building the capability to scale. So building on those leadership skills top to bottom within an organization or even a small startup. It's looking at the decision frameworks and giving people the empowerment and the capability and the capacity to make those decisions and how they live or fall by them. So it's the fast fail kind of attitude rather than organizations who might say, well, you go off and make those decisions, but you're going to fall on your sword with it. And then, of course, then you're back into fear, and then you're back into all the toxic cultures. So it's looking at all those different levers and the different objectives across the C-suite as well. So that's typically how I present my my three-stage approach, and it's across the two areas. So it doesn't matter whether you're a startup founder and early stage scale up, or whether you're much more of a sort of an established organization. You might be multicultural. You might have multiple different businesses within the overall business, but whether there are different depths and breadths to the organization, every founder and every business leader needs structure and clarity to be able to move their business forward. And so it doesn't really matter what stage of the business it's at, the growth challenges will always show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Looking to the back end of the business for a second, Sally, how are you currently finding these executives, these founders to work with you?
I do quite a lot of networking, one-to-one. I like to work through referral. That usually is the most successful way. I think impact and evidence speaks for itself. I also work with other platforms in terms of lead generation and so forth, but I hustle with the bigger ones. But generally speaking, it's because I speak at conferences, or I have been a judge, for example, with the construction news group. And so I've got quite a lot of exposure there. So I'm working with a bit more of the construction industry at the moment. I've worked with a lot of health tech businesses, so I'm working in various early stage NED roles with health tech, and the last year I've worked with a big music business. So it's mostly through referral, but I obviously use LinkedIn and various other tools to get my reach. But generally, I think it's those personal connections that I really rely upon.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, you're doing such intimate work with these businesses. Are you working with them in person often, or are you mostly working remotely with them?
I can do a combination of both. It's definitely hybrid. I think I prefer to do the workshops and some of the what you might call more localized training. So it might be having constructive conversations, or taking, certain sort of mid-management teams through a particular training course. That can all be done online. But I think the workshops, generally, I like to do it in person. You get a much better read of the room. You get to see how the personalities work with each other, where the egos might be sitting, where some of the unspoken dynamics of business leadership might sit
Those
that they may not
unspoken
necessarily.
dynamics. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're very
exactly.
important.
That quite
Very
often that they've
important.
got their head in the sand trying to ignore, or they just, they don't feel they can say something. And so quite often I'm the person who can be the sounding board, or the 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 conduit, if you like, for how they actually communicate better with each other.
Mm. Easier to do in person versus on Zoom. That is for
Always.
sure.
Yes, always.
That is for sure. Sally, 2026 is slowly but also very quickly approaching. I'm curious, do you have any goals you've set for yourself in the business for next year you're looking to achieve?
So every year I do two intakes on my Cresco course, which is focusing on, it's like a mini pack of the culture as a foundation for growth, but it's specifically focused at founders and startups. So that's kicking off in February, and I've got people signing up for that at the moment. So that's a group of 8 to 10 small founders or business owners who I get, on board, and it's online, but there's a lot of gel that's created there, and I love doing that because I get one-on-one sessions with them as well as part of the package.
Hmm.
The the goals I have in terms of coaching, a lot of the coaching I do is implicit within the work I do. So I'm a coach, I'm an advisor, and I'm a fractional consultant. And so whether I go down a fractional consulting route, I ultimately end up doing coaching one-to-one anyway within the organization. If I'm doing one-to-one coaching, I'm looking really at trying to get sort of 40 or 50 clients through next year who I can make real impact with. I'm not a sort of, reach them wide and fast, although I will say I have got something in stealth mode at the moment that is a new app that may well achieve that. So, yes, I do ultimately want to get a lot of the messages and the insights and the skills and capability training that I have available to more people.
Hmm.
But I think in terms of my day-to-day, week-to-week practice, it's really a handful of one-to-one coaching clients, and then 2 or 3 big meaty projects that I have sort of in parallel. But yes,
Yeah.
there is something brewing, and I have got this app in the
Hmm.
background. So that's currently in stealth mode, and I'm hoping that that will be released probably around February as well.
Very nice. It sounds like it's going to be a big 2026. Exciting.
Yes, I think I'm just trying to store myself through Christmas to be able to come at it with huge energy.
I love it. Sally, pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And that will wrap up another inspiring episode of the Founders Feature. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and connect with Sally on all of her social media and website. All of those links will be in the show notes and description down below. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or agency owner, and you're looking to scale your business, and you really want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we went from 0 to 30 million per year in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on climbing.